Hi everyone. So we're here today and we're going to have so much fun because I'm going to show you the so fun needlework MakerBox Kit. And this kit is going to be something that you can check out for a 2-week checkout. There's no reserves and no auto-renewals. But you can come in and get this box, and inside of it is some great stuff that's going to help you learn the basics of some stitches to get you doing things like needlepoint and different kinds of embroidery. And you can do everything from practical sewing to making super fun art and wearable things. So let's check out what you're going to see in the box. But first I want to show you a couple of the books that we have about sewing. We have some really cool brand new books that'll help you learn more about sewing, because this kit just gives you the basics. And if you need help, that's what grown-ups are for, and that's also what librarians are for, which sometimes we're grown-ups too. So come and see us if you need more information than what you've got in the kit. So one of the things you'll have is something that gives you tips and tricks. And it's going to show you some of the very basic, important things that you're going to need to start with if you've never sewn before, like how to thread a needle. And then it's going to talk about doing needlepoint. These are all things that you're going to be able to sample by doing the kit. Needlepoint, how to get your knot in there so that it doesn't come through and you have your project safe so that the stitches don't come out. How to use an embroidery hoop, which is also something included in there. Once you have that embroidery hoop on, you're going to be sewing embroidery, which is designs and patterns made with stitches. There's a lot of different ways. Some of them are trickier than others. We're just starting with some of the basics. Also, this is a very cool thing to know in your life, how to sew on a button. So, we've got a lot of different things going on here with our So Fun Needlework packet. Let's check it out. You'll see some actual samples of things in here too. Something like a bookmark that you could make your own using the felt that will come in here. Do some stitching on there. You can see how it looks on the back, not quite the same as the front. If you want it to be fancy, you could put another piece of felt over the back so you weren't seeing that part. But I wanted you to see how the back looks very different than the front when you're doing embroidery. This one is called Needlepoint, and it's done on something called plastic canvas. It's not cloth, like you can see. It's plastic, it's hard. And it's a nice way to get started because it's easy, the holes are really big. We've got instructions in there that show you just go in and out with your needle, putting it in the next space each time, and you can create all kinds of rows of different colors. You can make patterns, you can even make designs with it. You could make a coaster out of this. If you cut out the middle before you begin, you could make a picture frame and put your picture in there. And it feels pretty neat when you get all the yarn in there. It feels really soft. So that's something that's going to come in your packet and with some of the materials so that you can do your own. This was done on some plastic canvas, but usually this kind of stitching would be done on embroidery cloth. And I just wanted to show you though, again, so I could show you the back. And this has pretty big holes on it. So it's always good to practice with something that has fabric as kind of loose when you're first beginning, because it's easier to get your needle where you want it. But there's things like a whip stitch that goes along the edge, a running stitch, and other stitches that I've forgotten the names of because I'm not super good at this myself. This is a satin stitch. Here's a cross stitch, and you can see why, because it looks like XXXX. And we have a feather stitch. Looks a little bit like feathers going off in different directions. You can see how you can use the stitches to write things with too. So there's so many things. This is called a blanket stitch that would go along the edge of a blanket or something else. So these are some of the things that you might practice doing. I did a little piece of embroidery here. It says something on it. I know you can read it. So you can make any kind of pattern you want. You can do it just freehand, like you were sketching. If you want to draw your thing on there first, you can use an erasable marker, or you can use a permanent marker, or if you're sure you're going to exactly go over all your lines, or you can use a pencil, and then when you put it in the wash, which it does have to be washed gently, you put it, hand wash it, and then maybe have an adult help you with an iron to get it to go flat again, to steam it flat. But that way you can have your pattern on the cloth before you begin and make whatever kind of design you want. I started this one. You can see that I'm writing a word on here too. Can you tell what it is? The first letter's a little bit covered up, but I'll give you a hint. It's an L. L-O-V. Can you see what's at the end? That's right, it's love. So this one is in the embroidery hoop already, this cloth. I put it in there to get started on it, and the point of the hoop is to hold your cloth really tight while you're stitching so your stitches stay nice and even. Let me show you how it works. It's got sort of a screw thing that you just turn, and you know how these things go? Have you heard it? Where you say righty tighty lefty loosey, something like that. So if I want to go tight, I go to the right. If I want to go looser, I go to the left. I'm loosening it up now so that, see, my cloth just pops out, and that's super easy. Oh, there you can see the L. And I'm going to put it back in again. Just going to get my cloth in there as evenly as I can. It sort of stretches over there when it's open, and I'm going to pull it evenly and tightly. You can see it left a little mark from the last time I had the hoop on there, but that's okay because when I'm done, like I said, someone will help me with an iron so I don't burn myself, and we'll get it all nice and flat again. And I'm making it go righty-tighty again to get that hoop on really tight and hold my cloth so that I can sew some more. So basically, I've already threaded this needle, and in the packet it's going to give you instructions, but I'll bet a lot of you know already about this, where the needle has an eye in it, which is an open hole, and you have to aim your thread through there, and you probably have really good eyes so you can do that. Get the thread through it and leave a little tail behind it so it doesn't pull through, and then you're ready to go. And I'm going to try and connect my stitches here so I don't have any spaces. So I'm going a little bit in the end of that one, and I'm going to go down again, and then I'll come back up from the back. It takes a little practice to kind of figure out where your hand is at. If you're holding your other finger there, you can usually feel it. But like any other skill, it's just practice makes perfect, and you can be patient about it. I have to be patient with myself too. So I'm going to leave this one. I'm not going to finish it right now, but you get the idea. One thing you can do if you don't even really want to sew on cloth, did you know that you can sew on paper? This is cardstock to make a card, so we'll have a piece of that in there for you in case you want to make a card to send to somebody. The only thing that's different about sewing on paper rather than sewing on cloth is that the cloth you just make your hole with the needle as you're sewing. But when you're doing it on paper, you want to make those holes first, because if you make the hole at the time you're sewing, you might be pressing too hard or pulling too hard with your needle, and you might tear your paper. And you always have to use a really thick paper to do this. So I went through first and I made a bunch of holes along my lines. I drew my design first with a pencil, and then I went along the lines, kind of like a connect the dots picture, and I put my needle in, made all the holes, and now I'm ready to sew. So I'm going to do a back stitch here, where I kind of go back and forth, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, to make a nice even stitch around my design to outline it. If I wanted to be fancy, I could also make it into something called mixed media, where you combine different things, where maybe I have my sewing, but I also put on some colored pencil or crayon or paint, something to dress it up. So it's your art and you can make it any way you want. Wouldn't someone that you haven't seen in a while love to get a card like that in the mail that you made yourself? That's something you can do with this kit. Another thing you can do is sewing with yarn, and that's called crewel embroidery, when you have a thicker kind of yarn than just thread that comes on a spool, like we have the spools of thread, or even the embroidery thread, which is kind of soft, middle-sized stuff. But as we know, yarn is pretty heavy and thick, so we're going to use that on a heavier kind of cloth, and this is burlap. So you'll have a piece of that in there too. And when you're using yarn or something thick like that, you need a needle with a really big hole. I'll bet you can probably even see that on the video. So that makes it easy for you, put your yarn in. So you have a lot of ways here to get yourself started, and I'm sure you have your own creative ideas to do it. In this packet too, you're going to get a little baggie that will be marked that will let you know that this is a bag you get to keep in case you want to continue your projects at home. But all the other things have to come back so that our other friends can use it when we return it. Another thing that's going to be in there is a pin cushion. And this is handy because you are working with some sharp things when you're sewing. And the fact that I just dropped a sharp thing isn't too good. I try to keep all my sharp things in one place, and so you can see how I have them stuck in there, and that's a good way not to lose my needles or my pins. The pin is different than a needle because it has a little doodah on the end, and it's not for sewing, but it's for holding things together while you're sewing. So if you wanted to sew two pieces together and you overlap them and you wanted to stay them and have them stay in the right place while you were sewing your lines, you might put a pin in there to hold it tight, and when you're done you can take the pin out and your stitches are there. So you're all good. So there's so many ways you can go with this, and I hope you have a great time doing it and exploring what's in here. We'll have a nice pair of scissors that are only to be used on cloth, not on paper, not on other stuff. So that's what those are about. In any case, it's gonna be so fun, and I hope you can join us at Port Orford Public Library. Come in and check out this sewing maker box. See you soon.